there is no entailing law in evolution. So once you get beyond physics, you don't have, there is no inevitable directionality to evolution. So something different happens once you get into biology. What Erling was saying, and the fact that he found himself, just as people talking about DNA, scientists talking about DNA, have had to take a lot of words, translation, interpretation, stuff like that, coding from semiotics discourse. And he found himself having to talk about music. It's like Dennis Noble's book, isn't it? The Music of Life. The same thing, another developmental biologist trying to understand what's going on when bodies make themselves and minds make themselves, is finding himself having to talk about autopoiesis, about an orchestra without a conductor and so on. So that work is already going on. So I just want to, remind you guys that that's already happening.
Theodore Dobzhansky said that nothing makes sense except in the perspective of evolution. We've been extremely successful during the 1560s to identify the central dogma. That's the information molecules, the DNA and the way information flows, how we build up things. We can interpret how the various tools, how they are structurally designed and how they can operate to really fulfill their function. However, the more we study, the more we develop, get into a field of high complexity. How the genes regulated, which seems very straightforward, one gene, one protein, so forth, but how does this orchestra work without the conductor? Where does it all start? And how does it create the balance, what we call the homeostasis? I mean, it's a fantastic word to resort to, but what does it mean? So I spend my time writing about discoverers that have been awarded Nobel Prizes. So I see these people, the individuals, the environments and so forth. Many of them are, very, very mature individuals that take in all the dimensions of life, culture in all these aspects of it. Others are quite monolithic. They just stick to this single problem and they hang on to that. And for some reason, they are one of the 1,000 that are successful, because most of them fail, of course. And they are those that discover and opened up a completely new field of science. What I think is more important in development of science is the social context. The individual sometimes can be a lonely wolf, but very often you see the environments are extremely important. And I think that same applies to artists also, because an artist can only present the product, and the response is the one that defines the product. You're not the lonely person that you are.
As a scientist, you actually have moments of eureka that are rare and really transformative in your life. Everybody in this room who's a creative individual has had that moment where they either discovered something no one had ever seen. Imagine Galileo looking at the rings of Saturn, the first person looking at a virus through a microscope, or the CO2 that's embedded in the ice in Greenland. That moment you see something no one else has ever seen, or that moment when you integrate facts that people have never thought were related to each other. Think about Einstein integrating all the concepts. You live that often in isolation, sometimes with a couple of colleagues, but those eureka moments are so rich. This is the truth and the beauty we were talking about. I've had that joy, and I know those moments. They're very, very personal. I assume art is very much the same way, and it's just so intuitively obvious that this is what's driving evolution that I just sat back and I still remember that moment.